Okay, everybody, welcome to the CoLab Masters Series. Today we're going to be covering building electrification and IoT solutions. So we have a super packed program for today, so let's go ahead and dive in. I am Aiden Hitt, and I'm Hitt Contracting's CoLab Manager. A couple tips and hospitality or housekeeping items for today. Please make sure to mute your video and mics for the duration of the event. If you have any questions, we absolutely welcome them. Please make sure just to type them into the chat box because we are going to have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the program. And thirdly, for the best user experience, we definitely suggest in the lower left-hand corner of your screen, you can actually toggle over to the 50/50 view. That will actually allow you to see both the video as well as the presentation to display. Now, quickly before we dive in, I'd like to share a safety minute. I was totally plagued with headaches, especially jumping from virtual call to virtual call, working through COVID-19 with all the increased screen time. And so something that I actually did to work around the head fogginess was actually to invest in a pair of blue light blocking glasses. So mixed reviews from people, but it definitely has totally worked wonders for me. So I highly recommend doing whatever you need to keep your mind sharp and get rid of any type of fogginess, especially if you're out there on job site. Now let's go ahead and meet the three experts that we have today. Klaus Berberich is going to be joining us from Germany today, and he is the founder of Thingit. Klaus has 15 years of experience in applying disruptive technologies, drive innovation in his clients' businesses via software solution design and delivery. Tim Miskovich is the Chief Commercial Officer with Smart Engine WTech and will be leading the demonstration shortly. He has spent the last 4 years delivering network-powered lighting solutions for customers globally. And thirdly, Jeff Adams is Area Superintendent with Rosendin Electric. He brings 32 years of experience to the group and specializes in prefabrication and packaging. He also supported the project build-out here at the CoLab. So Klaus, over to you for the presentation.
Thank you very much, Aiden. And thanks, Hitt, for having me. Excited to be here. Hello, everybody. My name is Klaus Berberich. As Aiden said, I'm the founder of Thingit. Thingit is a building digitalization platform that is the brain behind some of the world's smartest buildings today. And the reason for me to start Thingit was that I had a strong desire to work on something that has a lot of purpose. And if we're thinking about the fact that people spend almost 90% of their time in buildings and that buildings produce 40% of the world's carbon emissions, creating a technology that helps make buildings more comfortable, more enjoyable for the people in them, and help make buildings more sustainable is that kind of purpose that I was looking for. On the next slide, so that's a little bit about myself, but today I will be talking about building electrification and digitalization, and I'm going to bring this into four sections. First, why bother with building electrification in the first place and digitalization? I'll focus specifically on significant commercial drivers. Second, we'll be looking at the infrastructure required to fulfill the requirements that are needed that are needed by these driving factors. Third, I'll go through an example with you, one of the world's smartest buildings, the Cube in Berlin. If you haven't heard about it, I'll introduce you to it. And fourth and finally, I'll share my perspective on what you need to look out for if you're looking to build or buy a smart building, or if you want to upgrade one and you want to make it electrified and smart. So on the drivers, there are four main drivers that we see towards building electrification and digitalization. First is space utilization, something that's really important. I'll go into much more detail on that. The war of talents is also really important. So how do we use the space better, and how do we make a better workplace experience for the people in that space? Now, there also is improved sustainability and better facility management. Those are often more supportive factors and secondary drivers. I won't be focusing on them today. So let's get started with the space utilization here. If you have an office where on one side you allow your employees to work from home, and on the other side you have assigned desks, which means everybody's got their own desk, right? Then we can see through the data that we're collecting and through lots of other studies that offices tend to be utilized around 50%. So if you imagine what that means you spend 50% of your rent, utilities, cleaning costs, and all that simply on the ability of people to be always returning to the same desk. That's what we would consider a very expensive status quo, and there's a large movement right now towards to move away from that, right? What's even worse than just the cost aspect of that is that 50% empty offices are not a great experience. People want to be there, to be interactive, to collaborate, to exchange ideas, and they welcome higher utilized offices. So the answer here seems relatively clear to be space utilization and a flexible office setting. And that's right. If it's done right, flexible offices where you book a seat and you every time you need one, and you don't book one if you don't need it, but flexible office spaces have higher productivity, higher employee engagement, better collaboration, and are significantly cheaper than assigned seating office environments, but only if it's done right. And what does doing it right mean? It means you have to consider the change management from the perspective of the person that is used to their regular desk, moving towards a flex desk environment. First thing that comes to mind is, do I even have a desk when I go to the office? So you need desk booking capabilities. Then if I'm in the office, where's Klaus today? Where's Aiden? Are they in the office? Can we meet? Can we collaborate? You need technology that helps find people where they are because they're not in the same place anymore. And then where do I leave my items when I'm in the office? I might need lockers, the ability to reserve one, open it, to get my things out. And then where's room Kansas City? I might need some help navigating a space where I'm in more different places at different times. And maybe I'm going to a coffee machine and it gives me some error code that I don't understand, and I need the information about that at my fingertips. The answer to all these things ultimately is a workplace experience app, which is very common these days and part of a digital building platform like ThingIt. And another part of the answer here, what flex desks need and why they need to be tech enabled, is that it becomes a little more complicated for your corporate real estate team, because they don't know. I have 80 people in my accounting department, 50 people in my sales department. Traditionally, I needed 130 seats. How many do I need now for this team? Do I need 60 for the accounting and 20 for the sales team? So you need to constantly look out for what is the office usage, and how do the desks and meeting rooms that I offer, how do they match to actual use? Do my meeting rooms have the right size? Are they being only booked, or are they being used as well? So for that, you need reliable sensor data. You might think that you can work with booking data, but do an experiment, go to your office if your office is open and if people can work on it, go on a Friday, check out which meeting rooms are booked and check out which meeting rooms are occupied. You'll see a big difference. So what you really need is desk and meeting room and so on occupancy detection at a new level. Now, the second major driver that I want to be talking about in the next slide is that war for talents. And you can ask yourself, do you need great employees? Do you need great tech employees? And if you do, well, you have some competition, right? The big five tech companies, Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, right? You're in competition for great employees with them. And I don't know if you've been to one of their offices lately. I don't know if you've ever been to the Google facilities in Manhattan, or if you've been to Facebook or Apple in California. But if you haven't, I recommend you should go and have a look. What you will see are offices that are tailored to the needs of the employees. They're comfortable, they have warm colors, they have collaboration spaces that are inviting and comfortable. You can bring your own device to find a desk or to adjust the environment to your needs. You can, it's intuitive to be around the space. You can find information about what's today's service offerings, what food is offered today, the sundown or in the evening, and you can get all the information you need at your fingertips at any point in time, right? And those offices tend to be designed to be sustainable as well, because that is something that specifically the younger generation considers a big focus. So all in all, what is happening here is that these big five tech companies create an experience worth commuting to. Their employees want to go to the office. It's a great place to be, to work, to collaborate when they want to be in the office. They can still be at home at some other days, right? Now, on the next slide, please, you might wonder, is that really important, right? Is that something that matters to you? And let's look at some numbers to figure this out, right? So if you're looking at an average rent in a DC office, downtown DC, 1,000 employees, you're looking at 11.5 million in rent on average, and another 1.5 million in additional costs. So that's quite sizable amount of money. But let's put this on the next slide in contrast with some other costs, specifically with the cost of your of the salary of the people that are in there. So if you've got 1,000 employees in DC, your salaries might be well worth of 80 million. They might be significantly higher depending on what company it is. I went with a conservative range here. And now you're looking at the cost of the salaries, but you have these people employed because they are producing more value than they cost you. So let's assume there is a value of the output that these people produce, and that value is, in this little calculation here, about 120 million. So it's about 10 times that of the office cost that you're looking at in this calculation example. So the question is it worth it, to create your office in such a way that it supports the value of what the people are producing better, that people are more productive, that they like to be there, and that they can do these kinds of things, right? So, and is there a causation or a correlation between a better office and higher value output? And causation on that is really hard, right, to scientifically prove in this environment. But I'll leave you with this one question, or with this one argument on the next slide. If you're looking at those big five tech companies, they happen to be the most productive companies in the world in terms of revenue per employee. So the question is, do you believe that this is coincidence that the companies that have the highest level of productivity worldwide also tend to have the most sophisticated and electrified and digitalized workspaces? I doubt that that is a coincidence. It's also not the only reason why they're so productive, of course. There are many other factors, but I believe this is one. And these are your competition for those great people that you're looking for to come and work for you. Now let's move on to section 3 of our little presentation today. What do you need? If you now say, okay, I get it. I understand the drivers. I want that kind of an office environment. What is it that I need? There are some things, of course, you need actors, right? You need the ability of the building to respond to the user's needs. The user may want it warmer, colder, the shades down, lighting. So traditional HVAC and building management actors, a building like this also needs a very good understanding of its usage. So it needs a lot of occupancy sensors, what we call an occupancy sensor grid. This is a little different than your traditional sensor grid. There's much more data that you're collecting here. And then finally, for workplace experience apps to work really well, the workplace experience app needs to know where you are in the building to give you contextual, meaningful suggestions to help you where you are. Just like Google Maps needs to know where you are, a good workplace experience app needs to know that too. And in order for that to work, you need an indoor GPS, and the technology for that are beacons. So the HVAC and the lighting can consider to be more traditional technologies, are around for a long time, established everything, right? The PARs, the occupancy sensors, well, that's established too, but we're looking at much more data from it now, not just is it used or not, but the intensity of usage. And we're looking at this as a much higher granularity with much more data. And the beacons and indoor GPS is relatively new. Now, there are many ways to get to that kind of an infrastructure, but what I recommend is that you look at smart lighting infrastructure, because it comes into your build, wherever there are humans, there is light. Wherever there's light, there's electricity. And because you have light control, you also have data in these environments. That predetermines the lighting system to be a great place to look to create that sensor backbone and the IoT infrastructure, the IoT grid in your building. Now, we say that you have all this hardware in the building. That's great. That's a good place to start, right? You now have all the sensors you need, the lighting, the controls, the beacons. You've got all this, but what you need in addition to that, of course, for that to work, what do you do with it, right? You need an integration layer that brings all these things together. So the next build-up item, please. And on top of that integration layer, as we've discussed, you also need user interfaces, so workplace experience app, analytical capabilities, and all that. Now, if you're thinking about what you need for great workplace management and for great space management and all that, if you're looking, for example, at booking, you don't only need an app and a sensor that tells you whether a room is available. You need your collaboration technology, for example, Office 365, the G Suite, whatever else it is that you're using to be connected. On the other hand, you might also need to know if you're creating a ticket, it might need to go into your CAFM system or into your ERP. So that integration layer is not just designed to integrate with your building technology, but it also needs to be integrating with a variety of other software systems around it. And the combination of an integration layer and the user interface is what we call a digitalization platform, and that is what we do at ThingIt. Now, if you want to build a smart office building, in this case, it works the same way for other asset classes. You need one of those digitalization platforms. Please come and talk to me, and I'll let you know what we can do to help you. But in any case, what you're doing here needs to support you now and for a long time in the future. So consider flexibility a major aspect in your search. Now let's go on towards section number 3. In section number 1, you have learned why even bother. Section number 2, you learned some core technologies on the hardware as well as on the software side. Now, I want to introduce you to the Cube Berlin. This is the building that you're seeing here now on the right side. It is designed by Star Architects 3XN. It's right next to Berlin's main station. If you ever find yourself in Berlin, please let me know and I'll show you around that building. It's quite fascinating. If you are working in the Cube Berlin, you start your interaction with the building when you're at home. You open an app, you find out whether there's a desk available to you, whether the people you wanted to meet with, where they have booked their desks so you can book in their proximity. Then you go towards the Cube. You can use your phone as the key to get access to the garage, to drive your car in there or your bike, or you can just go through the speed gate. It'll automatically call the elevator with the floor that you're working on. It'll show you in the app where the desk is that you have booked so you can find your way towards it. You can see who else is in the office with you. You can go to a meeting room, and if you need to adjust the light to go into presentation mode or the shades to go down, you do all of this straight from your device. And so the office environment is really comfortable, very supportive, very intuitive for you to use with your own device. At the same time, there's really high utilization of the space, creates a very attractive work environment, but the corporate real estate teams always know how many desks are being used by which group, what are the offices that are being used. And all of this is powered by a smart lighting system like the one I talked about, in combination with traditional HVAC and traditional technology, a smart lighting system with a indoor GPS system. Now, we also use the data to make the Cube one of the most sustainable buildings by making sure that we provide heating and cooling and all these things specifically where it's needed. But I won't go too much into this today. If you're interested in that, please don't hesitate to reach out. Now with that, I think we're moving over to the last part, to section 4 of my presentation for you today, before you're going to see what's been done in the collab in DC. What do you need to be successful if you choose to do one of these things? The first and most important thing, of course, is you need to have a vision, right? You don't do electrification and digitalization just for the purpose of doing it. You got to think in use cases, things like what we've seen now, space utilization, comfort for the people. Touchless interfaces certainly are on top of everyone's mind right now, but they also show a very important aspect, which is you need to anticipate flexibility. The Cube has massive COVID-19 supporting features because you'd never touch an interface with anybody else. And we can always measure whether there are too many people in an area that's too dense. We can make sure that social distancing is being applied and that teams are alerted. We didn't know this when the Cube was created. This was technology that had to be adjusted when the pandemic hit. So it's very important to consider flexibility in your overall strategic vision, but also have a solid footing of what the use cases are you definitely will need. Now, once you have that, you need integrated planning, right? You need to make sure that the people that are building your BMS, the building that are building your conference rooms, the people that are building your lighting system, that they all are ready to talk to each other, that they're ready to work well with each other, that they understand that they're part of an integrated overall experience that is different from a very traditional building. So you need to highlight and define the interfaces early and make sure that you're selecting technologies and teams of people that like to work together and are good at working together. Now, once you've done that and you have a good planning, you understand what all the interfaces are, you need to move over to a coordinated development effort where it is important that you maintain the vision of your digital building throughout the development process. You need to make sure that all the interfaces are maintained and that people are not falling back to how they've done things 10 or 15 years ago, that they adhere to the interfaces. And there is going to be a little bit more coordination between the different delivery teams. And you need to make sure all these different coordinations are done. It's very much recommended from our perspective, from my perspective, to have a dedicated coordination team that makes sure all interfaces are working. And you've got to keep commissioning in mind here. You have a chain of things that now need to be working together. You have commissioning becomes very important, and you should be looking for technologies that make commissioning easier because you now have a very high level of integration and dependencies between different technologies. That can work absolutely to your advantage if it's planned well and executed well and commissioned well. And then finally, a digital building, an electrified building, is a little bit more complex to run than a building that doesn't have this, right? For all the right reasons, as we've looked at for the drivers. But you need to make sure that you have tech-savvy operations and that can deal with this complexity. And you need to make sure that in your commissioning process, you have proper handoff between a coordinated development and the digital operations. And that, I believe, sums up my little presentation for today. You've learned a little bit about myself, but then some things about why you would want an electrified building, what infrastructure you need from it. You've learned about an example and what I recommend how you go about this. And with this, I'm going to return it to you, Aidan. Thank you very much, everybody.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing all of that, Klaus. Next, we're going to head into the demonstration portion, as Klaus mentioned, with Tim and Jeff. And so really this project is looking at two complementary thoughts. The first is how we can actually create that IoT backbone, leveraging a smart lighting infrastructure. And the second is then how you can actually activate all of the different types of spaces that we're going to be looking at, leveraging that tech-enabled platform. So Tim and Jeff, please join me up here for the demonstration.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Aidan. Thank you, Klaus. We're going to start off with Jeff from Rosen explaining kind of the status quo of traditional infrastructure, how it is done today.
Thank you. First, I'd like to start off by thanking HIT for inviting us to collaborate on this project. It was a lot of fun working. Starting off with the traditional lighting system, there's basically three separate systems for the power, one for control, one for the sensors. Each one of those systems requires an individual connection for each component. This, of course, it's a significant design time and also field setup time goes on with the system. Along with the system, also, there's limited control. Once you set each hardwire your system for the system in the room, it's pretty much set. This is also with the system, it's limited intelligence and a limited flexibility in being able to use the ground, which is not easily updated, expanded, or reprovisioned.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yep.
I'm going to dive into the network aspect now for network power lighting. As you can see here, the infrastructure is a little less complex, and that's because it's based off of IT best practices. We're going to start in the bottom left. There's always going to be a head-end unit. For us here, in this case, it's the smart director. That allows for a central management point It stores all the data locally and also has an open API and a backend IP stack, which allows integrations into the building management system, the building automation system, or smart building apps like Klaus mentioned. Beyond that, it goes into the power control device. That's going to be the smart engine. That provides power and control to the light fixtures. Then we go into a sensor network. The smart sensors for us, they're multi-sensors and they create a fine mesh network throughout the building, collecting a ton of data in real time. And then you have the light fixtures. There's not a huge difference in the light fixtures from network and traditional. The biggest difference would be though that there's no more drivers doing the AC to DC power conversion because everything here is low current, low voltage and DC. This is all connected through, you see the blue lines, that's just going to be your standard data cables, RJ45s. That's going to be Cat 5e or better, a very simple infrastructure to build and to maintain. Sticking with the infrastructure, you'll see on the left-hand side for the labor materials, the low voltage wire is a much lower price per linear foot than the flex conduit. But it also, in the low voltage installation, being that there will be more wires, but the delta there is easily obtained because of the time and labor to install. Going into the low voltage wiring aspect, you'll see that it's very simple compared to the top, which shows traditional, and the bottom is just the low voltage wiring laid in a cable tray. Then it comes into the splicing and the patching. That's actually how you connect the light fixtures. Traditional requires splicing, which is 3 independent connections, or patching, you're putting the device simply into the receiver. And the one point that Jeff mentioned, I think the biggest thing to focus on would be the moves, adds, and changes portion. This is, with smart lighting, it's easy to adapt because it's going to be software based. It's a few clicks of a button, and you're able to reconfigure a room, you're able to do your moves, adds, and changes, because we all know this, the way a building is built, it's not going to generally be the same in a few years, or the tenants switch out. Next, we've been focusing so much on the infrastructure, we're going to go into the sustainability aspect. One of the biggest benefits of smart lighting is the sustainability portion. This is actually a live pool from an office that's 12,000 square feet. And in this office, you'll see the blue lines. That shows the power consumption for lighting. On the left-hand side, you'll see the top number is 1.5 kilowatt. And that average peak comes out to about 0.15 watt per square foot. If you compare that to current industry best practices of 0.6 to 0.8, you can see that you get tremendous energy savings, and it really helps companies achieve their sustainability goals. Where this is applicable. Smart lighting is applicable everywhere. The majority of spaces to date is in data centers and offices. However, we see schools, universities, healthcare, hospitality, and other asset classes adapting to smart lighting more and more. So more than just the asset classes, the new build versus renovation. That's one of the biggest questions we always get. And yes, this technology is mainly going to be for your new build, your new construction, or your core and shell TI. If it's just getting a minor retrofit, just purely cosmetic or aesthetic, there's other solutions on the market that can adapt to the traditional infrastructure, and it'll be much more beneficial to the user commercially. Yep.
So during construction, we kicked off the construction. Everybody came to our prefab shop. At the prefab shop, we had introduction. Smart engine bring all the components, the fixtures, and the parts necessary. What I thought was interesting, the first thing we did was took this off-the-shelf fixture, removed the ballast, just like you spoke about. We removed the ballast and the drivers, left with 2 wires coming off the LED. The 2 wires off the LED, we had just a simple connector that changed from the LED to an RJ45, which is the same as the telephone jack. The parts. First day, I think it took a day and a half for us to prefab all the cables. So in our prefab shop, before we came to site, we prefabbed all the cables. We had specified lengths from the drawings. The actual install took 3 visits to install. The first visit, we put all the cable in the ceiling. The second visit, we worked with the fixture and the ceiling person. We dropped in all the fixtures. And then the last visit, the third visit, started all the fixtures up, made the connections to the IT rack, and then did a startup and commissioning. It all went together very smoothly. The one thing I would say though, as far as changes go, during construction, we have to move one fixture. Well, it's really easy with one fixture. We just had to remove one connector, move the fixture over 2 feet, and reconnect it. It took a matter of like 10 minutes to move one fixture. So it is very expandable and flexible.
Thanks, Jeff. It was a pleasure working with the resident team. You can see the great work there. In the bottom left hand, how neat the infrastructure is, and the guys did a great job. So, moving on, we're coming into the integrated app management portion. This is really what Klaus was driving home in his slides. This is the actual Thingit app here in the CoLab that we use. These are actual screenshots, and on the left-hand side, you'll see the basic dashboard, the landing page. And on that landing page, it gives you easy access to controls. So what that means, you have the ability to control the lights. In this case, we have the ability to control the shades, which we'll show you in a few minutes when we walk through the space. In addition, the occupancy and utilization. How's the space being used? Where are the free desks? Where are the free meeting rooms? Space booking. That's an easy way to book a desk, a meeting room, an office. As Klaus said, from the comfort of your own home, in the morning you can wake up, book your desk, commute into work, and you know where you'll be working if you have a flex space. Or an incident reporting, which comes into the workflow management. If you see something wrong in the office, snap a simple picture with beacons. It'll automatically tag where you are, shoot it to facility management. Facility management can then take that report and assess it and just smooths the total operation and makes the experience in the build space a lot better for the tenants. Good, so without further ado, we'll walk through the space and show a little bit of the work we've done here at the CoLab. Coming through the open area here, you'll see up in the ceiling the light fixtures. These are from XAL. They're integrated with a sensor, so it's very neat and clean in the ceiling. As we come in here to the comms room. So in the comms room, here's a sample of a light fixture with below is the driver, the ballast, all the wiring and everything that would come in a traditional system. We're able to just simply remove that. Take a fine lead, as Jeff mentioned, from the fixture, connect it to an RJ45, a sensor, and then it comes back into the power and control device that you saw earlier, the engine, and below it's the head-end device, the director. Simple IT infrastructure. This here is a Cat5e from Superior Essex. It just runs out into the floor through your traditional path of IT infrastructure. There's no difference this from a IP telephone, an IP camera, access control security. It all is the same backbone. So as we move on, we're coming to the lounge, and in the lounge we'll see the integrations to the API with the Thingit app, which really plays into the user-centric approach of the modern workplace. Here we see it's sadly not a sunny day here in Buster, but we're able to just say, hey, we want to lower the shades with the press of a button from my smartphone. I'm able to do that. The shades have gone down low enough. Simply hit stop, they stop at that level, and then it allows the user to have that interaction with the build space. Moving on, we're going to go into an office. In this case, I booked the office, I reserved it for the day. I'm going to come into it because it's mine. As soon as I come in, the lights come on. It triggers a motion data point that gets sent back to the Office 365 or whatever program is being used, and says, hey, Tim has booked this office, Tim is in the office, everything's okay. If this was a meeting room, everybody has their standing meetings every Monday morning, 9 a.m. Only takes place every now and then, especially now, but in general, it ends up to a call or gets pushed. With technologies like this and the integration abilities, you're able to say, okay, hey, within 5 minutes, nobody's here, then the meeting's not taking place, release it, and somebody else can quick book it to actually get the most utilization of the space. And you'll see that up in the ceiling. There's 4 little sensors here. They're not very big. They're about the size of a quarter. And, as technology advances, things get smaller and more efficient. And here, by having these 4 in, we're able to see every corner of this space, and that's scalable. If this was a 10-person meeting room, if you had a 10-story building, 10-person meeting room on each one, you could take the utilization analytics over a given year and determine how much of that space is being used. Is it the front, the middle, the left? Are we only using the space to 20%? Then hey, maybe we can throw up a wall and make 2 5-person breakout rooms, which allows more meeting spaces for the employees to use. Good, moving here, we're going to come out back to the open office where we initially saw the XAL fixtures. These are human-centric lighting, tunable white fixtures. A lot of people are discussing this now, especially with the circadian rhythm. And this will show that these light fixtures have from 2700 to 5000 Kelvin. And you can use and mimic the sunlight. So in the morning, it's going to be warm. Through the afternoon, it will go more to a colder white, and then it warms back up in the day, which there's scientists are saying it helps with stress, productivity, and sleep cycles. So I'm going to cycle through this and show the different colors all through a single fixture. This is all software based. Good. And so as you can see with smart lighting, lighting is more than just lights on and off. It gives you the ability to the facility manager to collect the data that allows them to make better decisions. Same with the workplace strategy, but also it allows the users or the employees of a company to have a more user-centric workplace, and they get a better experience, and it increases their productivity. So I hope you guys like it, and it doesn't do it justice virtually. So if you ever get a chance, swing by the Code Lab and check out the smart lighting deployment here.
Okay, thank you both for that demonstration. So now we're going to go ahead and take a couple questions. So I'll check the chat. So if you have any, please type them in there so that we can make sure to get to it. So the first question is, what is the permitting process like with this type of infrastructure compared to typical electric?
Good, Jeff. We'll take that one.
So the low voltage permit, if you're trying to pull low voltage permit, the low voltage permit is a lot less strenuous, and the actual overhead cost of the permit per square foot is even lower.
Yeah, so with smart lighting, the actual line voltage, the line voltage electricity, the permitting stops in the comms room. So pretty much it runs through the comms room, at that point it stops. So all the line voltage that would normally be permitted up to the ceiling, that disappears and falls under the umbrella of the low voltage. But that just depends on the jurisdiction. Every jurisdiction has their own rules and regulations, so definitely check with your local experts to determine that.
Great, thank you both. The next question is, could the same system be used for contact tracing within the office environment? Klaus, to you.
Yeah, great question. It absolutely can be used, and specifically if you have an indoor GPS system, right? It allows to understand where people are. You have several options here in this environment, depending on your data privacy and data protection requirements. The app can detect where people are and can detect proximity, very similar to what the proximity tracing in the official apps does, but you can also give Bluetooth tags to your employees, and then the smart lighting system will detect the tags, hand over that information to us, and we can track and trace the contact that people had. And then finally, we have the ability to create dashboards out of the booking data. So if you know that somebody booked a conference room with 5 people and they were in that conference room, we can figure out that contact tracing. Same as with desk booking, figure out who was in the same space, who was in the same floor, who was in the same building, the same time over the last couple of days. So absolutely, I think that's one of the major development items, both in the hardware as well as on the software side, to support the contact tracing effectively and safe return to the office.
Another question, how does this tie into or replace your existing building management system?
So smart lighting would tie in generally to the building management system through the backend IP integrations. I wouldn't say we replace it by any means. You still need the standard building management system, but what smart lighting does is it creates a fine mesh sensor network with a ton of data that can be exported to the building management system, which allows the BMS system to function more efficiently because they're getting temperature data, motion data, things of that nature, which will allow it to be optimized instead of.
Next question is, are there considerations for provisioning additional rack space in larger closets to accommodate switches and cabling?
So, accommodations of the rack space and cabling, it depends on how the build is done. But generally, you're going to see, maybe 2U for 3,000 to 5,000 square feet. So it's not a large amount. It really just depends on the design of the space. However, it doesn't need to sit in your core rack. It can sit decentralized or be placed wherever is best suited for that given environment. It's I think we've done a ton of deployments around the world, and every deployment has its own caveats, and each one, sometimes it's in the electrical room, sometimes it's in the comms closet, sometimes it's decentralized in the floor. It just truly depends on the building and how it's designed.
Right. You mentioned that this is safer. What do you mean by that?
So I would say there's the use of the cables between all the fixtures. You're using low voltage cables, so that I would say it's less riskier, but I would make sure that all the cables, the chances of being in contact with a voltage above 24 volts is, except for the rack, is 0. That would make it safer.
All right, we'll do one more question. How applicable is this for renovation or fit out versus new buildings? Klaus?
Well, all the different technologies that you've seen today can be used as well in new builds, as also in retrofitting environments. From a software perspective, obviously, if you have a smart lighting system like the one that you've seen here today, that sophistication is easier to get in a new build. But as Tim was saying earlier, there are some technologies available that provide similar capabilities. So from the perspective of a great workplace experience and an electrified office building, you can retrofit your existing environment just as well.
Perfect. Okay, everybody. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. Jeff, Klaus, and Tim, thank you all three for sharing your expertise with our group here, as well as, of course, to the project team that made this all possible, spearheaded by several internal champions within HICL. Please be sure to look out for additional information for our next Master Series event, which is going to be in early October, focusing on designing for safety and engineering out various types of hazards. Thank you again.